Good evening, and thanks for joining us. I'm Jill Jordan Spitz, Senior Editor for the Arizona Daily Star, in for Maria Parham. Tonight on AZ Illustrated Metro, we'll hear some ideas for optimizing trade between the U.S. and Mexico. Then we'll ask what that means for Tucson businesses. We'll get an update on Tucson's road repair program and hear from a survivor of the attack on the USS Arizona in Pearl Harbor. But first, a look at today's top stories.
The first poll is out gauging voter sentiment for the 2014 Arizona gubernatorial election. Susquehanna Polling and Research says its early December survey of 600 likely voters found Secretary of State Ken Bennett at the top with 20% support in a field of 6 Republican candidates. State Treasurer Doug Ducey was second at 8%. The survey showed Bennett favored over Fred Duvall, who's the only Democrat in the race so far, by a 38% to 33% margin. The poll has a margin of error of plus or minus 4 percentage points. Arizona's first and only governor of Mexican descent is receiving the Global Diplomat Award tonight. Raul H. Castro is being honored for his decades of public service. The Consular Corps of Arizona is presenting Castro with the award and creating a scholarship in his name. The 97-year-old former governor also served as the U.S. ambassador to Argentina, Bolivia, and El Salvador. The controversial auction of Hopi Nation artifacts has come to a happy ending. The auction in Paris on Monday saw 21 sacred Hopi masks sold to the Los Angeles-based Annenberg Foundation, and officials of the foundation said they will give the masks back to the Arizona tribe. And that's a look at tonight's headlines.
Arizona Congressman Matt Salmon held a hearing in Tucson this week on trade between the United States and Mexico. As Christopher Conover reports, the hearing included other members of Congress and business representatives.
This line of trucks at the Arizona-Mexico border is more than an idling group of tractor-trailers. It represents big money.
Mexico is Arizona's largest export market and our top trading partner. In 2012, the year for which we have the most recent statistics, Arizona exported nearly $6.3 billion in goods and services to Mexico. And of course, this number totals over 30% of all of Arizona's exports.
Making sure goods can easily and efficiently cross the border is a big concern for those involved directly in trade, and for members of Congress who held a subcommittee field hearing in Tucson this week to learn more about the issue and discuss solutions.
We must expedite the legal flow of traffic, commercial traffic into our country. When you have to wait 2.5 hours at our ports of entry here in southern Arizona, you're not going to be coming as often as you might.
One suggestion to help reduce wait times is to use tolls for people who want to cross more quickly.
Have you seen or been able to study effectively what the impact of tolls have on travel, on tourism, on commercial travel? Does it have a negative effect? Does it suppress that desire to come through that port of entry?
What we've seen is that it actually does not have a negative effect. People are willing to pay not to have to wait 2.5 hours in line. The primary tolling focus will be on the commercial traffic. And believe me, a truck sitting in line costs $125 an hour to sit there. If they can pay $25 to go across the border in 15 minutes as opposed to spend 2.5 hours in line, for them it's pure economics.
Coming to the border region is important for members of Congress because they can learn firsthand what the issues are when making policy.
Even folks who specialize in trade is they don't understand the scale, the number of trucks, the amount of product, the number of people that cross the U.S.-Mexican border every single day, whether it be in California, Arizona, New Mexico, Texas.
One of the people who testified at that hearing was Lea Márquez-Peterson, the president of the Tucson Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. She joins us in the studio now to share her perspective on the impact of international trade for Arizona companies. Welcome, Leah.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
What did the subcommittee ask you to comment on specifically?
You know, it was really an honor to have the subcommittee approach me. This is my very first time testifying in front of a congressional hearing. They specifically wanted to talk about commerce, border security along our international border, and certainly from an Arizona perspective, we bring that kind of ground zero perspective of businesses that should be doing more business cross-border. So I spent time talking about some of the impediments and challenges, and I think some of the opportunities that the U.S. had in terms of international trade.
And could you expand on that a little bit? What did you tell them?
Sure. Well, our Chamber of Commerce represents businesses, obviously, in southern Arizona and Sonora. So we have more than 1,000 members. And I mention that because over 70% of them have 25 employees or less. So the perspective I could bring to that panel was really around small business engagement and commerce and international trade, the interest that the businesses have here in Arizona in doing import-export, and some of the challenges they have. Financing and access to capital continues to be an issue for the business community, whether that be growing your business and elevating your business here in Arizona or having an interest in exporting. In addition, I think a key challenge is really finding those connections, whether it be vendors or suppliers, cross-border. And it makes sense, obviously, for Arizona to continue to grow its export into Mexico.
What can international trade do for the economy that domestic trade cannot?
There was one particular quote that I used in my testimony, and I wanted to quote it because I thought it was great. The U.S. government estimates that each additional $1 billion in new exports supports more than 6,000 new jobs. In Arizona alone, and we do close to $6.3 billion with Mexico, that equates to about 111,000 jobs here in the state of Arizona. If we truly want to improve our economy, stimulate our economy, exporting and our opportunities an hour and a half south of us here in the Tucson area are key.
It seems like this is an exciting time for cross-border trade where organizations are working together in a new way. What's happening on that front?
I've also seen that. I've been the president of our chamber for about 4 years now, and during that time, things have really progressed. You see a lot of our elected officials doing cross-border economic development trips. That's exciting. Our own chamber does trade mission trips to Guaymas, to Hermosillo. We're doing one in the spring to Cananea to talk about the doubling of the mine in that community and what that can mean to Arizona businesses. There's a lot of additional interest in that. In addition, the country of Mexico, President Peña Nieto, has done a number of different decrees and organizations and initiatives on his side of the border to support entrepreneurship and commerce. So you've got not only activity and excitement happening here in Arizona and in the United States, but also on the Mexican side and with the government of Sonora.
And what about the Mexican economy? Things are happening there too. Could you talk about that a bit?
They are. I think a lot of us in Arizona don't realize that the GDP is actually growing at a faster pace in Sonora as compared to Arizona. They're having and continuing to have a real estate boom, where I know even in the Arizona Daily Star that was referenced in one of the articles. I think it was back in September of 2012, they were in the middle of a real estate boom. But we suffered and continued to kind of come out of our economic depression here in the United States. So what an opportunity, a missed opportunity, I think, by a lot of the businesses in Arizona. And that's one of the priorities we have in our Hispanic chamber, to promote that and to assist businesses to do cross-border trade.
And do you think that there was a misperception about the Mexican economy, or has the economy changed so much that now is the time when it wasn't the time before for increased cross-border trade?
I think there are a lot of misperceptions about Mexico in general. I mean, a lot of the conversation that happens, that you see in the media or at the federal level, is around illegal immigration. And I know our Congress is certainly a debate now around legal immigration and the effect, the economic impact that can have on our businesses. So that whole dialogue, I think the tone of that dialogue has changed over the last year. And certainly that's the same in terms of the economy of Mexico. They have a growing middle class. I think many that did business with Mexico in the past felt that there was either the very rich or the very poor, and there wasn't really much in between. And that's changed in Mexico over the last few decades.
You mentioned the Cananea mine. What are some other exciting things you see happening, some things that are working in the Mexican economy right now?
Well, certainly a lot of the dialogue here in Arizona is around the port of Guaymas. And we took a group of about 20-some business and government leaders to the port of Guaymas specifically to tour it and understand the bulk that was coming in and what kind of impact that might have on our businesses. Traveling with us was the University of Arizona, Pima Community College, Pima County, as well as different business leaders. So it was exciting to see them engage. We often talk about what's the economic impact, but seeing it for your own eyes is a little different. We also toured the offshore group, which I think is a wonderful opportunity we have here company that provides manufacturing facilities in Guaymas. I think they've got something like 16,000 employees that most here in Arizona are not aware exists. So there's a lot of opportunities that we can show people as we do trade mission trips throughout Sonora.
And the Daily Star and the Chamber are teaming up on a cross-border economic business guide. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. As we've done this work over the last several years, most of the things that people ask us for are the connections. And we realize there is no type of business directory or guide that can help you understand who's doing business, whether in Sonora or Arizona. So our Tucson Hispanic Chamber has partnered with the Arizona Daily Star to produce the Arizona Sonora Business Resource Guide. In this guide, it will include data, statistics, feature stories that the Arizona Daily Star is putting together, as well as a business directory that is free to be included in. The companies that would be listed in such a directory would include customs brokers, freight forwarders, logistics companies, manufacturers, that kind of business that are interested in doing that cross-border trade. So the exciting thing is in the spring, we will be announcing and revealing the guide that'll be done in English and Spanish in different events in Hermosillo, Tucson, and Phoenix. So it truly is statewide coverage.
And how can businesses get involved if they'd like to be listed?
Sure, they can go to our website, TucsonHispanicChamber.org, or to the Arizona Daily Star website. They can find the link there, input their information, and again, they're listed for free.
And we have about 30 seconds left. Could you talk a bit about the potential for cross-border trade?
Yeah, I think if people are curious, or if there are business owners out there listening and curious about what the opportunities are, we host regular events on doing business in Mexico, and have a lot of events that we call conexiones, or connections, where people can network and get to know one another. I think there are misperceptions about just what that opportunity is cross-border, and at the Tucson Hispanic Chamber, we'd like to help.
Great. Thank you so much, Leah, for being with us.
Thank you.
I'm Gwen Eiffel. On the next News Hour, Paul Salmon's conversation with the winner of this year's Nobel Prize for Economics. That's Wednesday on the PBS News Hour.
When he opened his animation studio back in 1923, Walt Disney began down a path that would revolutionize Hollywood.
Walt had a vision that animation could entertain an audience for a feature-length film, and everyone thought he was crazy.
Looking back on 90 years of Walt Disney animation on the next morning edition from NPR News.
Tucson voters decided a year ago to spend $100 million to fix up the city's ailing roads. It's been about 6 months since the city started spending money on the projects, and Andrea Kelly has an update from the Transportation Department about where the money has been spent so far.
The program was designed to spend $20 million a year fixing roads. The city is about halfway through this fiscal year and has spent about $1.5 million so far. That spending pace is about to change.
Our primary paving season is warm weather. Usually the first 6 months of the year we'll do the majority of the work.
Right now the city is focused on keeping good roads good. It's putting what's called a fog seal on the roads that aren't in bad shape yet, such as Craycroft near Grant Road. That type of surface treatment is among the cheaper projects in the $100 million 5-year program. Overall, it's designed to fix about 130 miles of major roads and a little more than 100 miles of neighborhood streets by the middle of 2018.
The idea is to not let water penetrate into the cracks. Prevent as much as you can. Preventing that from happening is how you preserve your pavements. As you can see behind us, you have Stone Avenue in the 5 Points area. If you look at the pavement condition, it looks in pretty good condition. And the whole concept is to keep it in that condition. So you have some voids, you have some pop-outs of the materials on the surface starting to deteriorate. Similar to if you were putting a roof coating on your roof. The idea is to keep it from leaking in your roof, and the same thing with pavement. Anytime I can seal any of the moisture out of the pavement, then I prolong the lifespan of the pavement. The idea is to keep the pavements in that 90% range and a really high quality range, moving them to 3 to 5 years more lifespan. So that's what you're going to see behind us.
Here's how it works.
I think of Golf Link since I drove it in this morning. What you're doing is we have a crack seal program that goes in front of the program that crack seals the existing cracking in the pavement. These are newer or better pavements that you would consider probably in fair to good condition. So you seal those existing cracks, and you come back in with emulsified asphalt, very thin coat, 3/8 of an inch, and put a nice black seal on it and seal out the gradations in the asphalt as well as the minor cracking. So basically preserving the life of that pavement. The idea of asphalt pavement is to extend the life of the pavement. Typical lifespan of a pavement, especially in the Southwest, we designed for a 20-year lifespan.
The 5 Points intersection is scheduled to get that sealing coat this week. Those sealing projects are faster than the kind of work that will begin next year. The upcoming projects will be more work. There'll be a process called mill and overlay.
You're actually going out and you're removing the top level surface of it, usually 2 inches in depth, and you're coming back in. And yes, the first 6 months of the year, you'll see a lot of activity.
Cole says a lot of the work will be done during the day, contradicting the typical approach of nighttime road work. He says that's the fastest way to get the job done. The city is working with a bond oversight commission to serve as a watchdog for the $100 million road improvement plan.
Because my concern, Daryl, would be that...
So they're watching budget, they're watching the commitment that we've made to the voters to make sure that is done. And they're also working with the residential piece, which hasn't been defined, which is 15% of the money, or the $15 million over the 5-year period, approximately $3 million per year.
And that's where this commission is really focusing their opportunity to choose those roadways and how we deal with neighborhood streets.
Pajot says the commission will propose to the Transportation Department in January its recommendations about how to improve or protect neighborhood streets. He comes to the position with experience in road work.
My history with transportation is ADOT for about 13 years, where I was a resident engineer. Came to work for the city in '95 and retired from the city in 2008 as the Deputy Director for Transportation.
He says the Oversight Commission is tasked with keeping the city on schedule, on budget, and aware of local feedback.
Well, our role is financial oversight primarily, but we also want to have that input into the process that allows the staff to understand how people who work and live in this community feel about their roadways. So it's not just a purely technical approach, it's more of a listening to how people feel about it, getting activists that are interested in making our community better involved, and opening up a dialogue. And so I think that's where we're at with our commission.
The meeting agenda of topics to be discussed is posted online days ahead on the city clerk's website. Beyond attending to give feedback, the Tucson residents' role is to pay for the projects with the voter-approved property tax increase, and Cole says to try not to be frustrated in those cone zones.
We want to say please be patient with the workers out there while they're working. Understand that orange signs are painful on your commutes to work and home and all you do, and please be patient with those folks because we're going to interrupt your traffic and that is good progress. In the long run, you'll see a better quality pavement out there, effectively saving you dollars in your commutes to wherever you may be going.
"72 years ago, Japan bombed the USS Arizona and prompted the United States to enter World War II. Christopher Conover caught up with Lauren Bruner, one of a dozen living survivors of that attack. Bruner was in Tucson for several events at the University of Arizona.
Thank you so much for coming into our studio and joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
You're here on the campus of the University of Arizona as we approach the 72nd anniversary of Pearl Harbor. You'll be meeting, obviously, with students who weren't alive at the time. What do you tell people about your experience? What do you tell people about the war, especially when your crowd was not alive?
Well, we've had a lot of experience doing that very same thing in the past years. I did quite a bit of give quite a bit of talks at the high schools. Kids, they want to know what happened. But that seems to me that that's one thing that they don't tell the kids anymore. You ask what's Pearl Harbor, they I don't know.
You were 21 years old on December 7th, 1941. As I understand, 21 years old and 14 days to be exact. Your battle station in the picture we have, you show your battle station.
Yes.
What was your job on the Arizona?
I was with the anti-aircraft director, and we were to gather all the information on the enemy ships and stuff like that, see how fast they were going, or what direction they were going, and we would have to put all the data into the computers. And in those days, computers were computers. We had a Mark III, which was 30 inches wide, 36 inches tall, and 48 inches long, all full of just nothing but mechanical driven gauges, gears, and but you got to get the job done pretty nice. You try to go out on target practices. You're trying to you send a 2,000-pound projectile 20 miles to try to hit a target. And we do it every once in a while. Come close. It's fun.
On that day, obviously you're one of a very small number of very lucky people to have survived that attack. If you can, tell us a little bit about what happened and what happened afterwards to you in your life. Obviously, December 8th came around and you were one of the lucky survivors, and you're still with us today.
Well, I was very lucky now to get off. But my station, the director, was in the platform just immediately above the Admiral's Bridge. When the bomb blew up on the ship, an aerial bomb had gone down through the 3 decks into a ammunition bin, and that had 1 million pounds of black powder that blew up right in there. So the consequence was they blew that entire bow off the ship off completely, broke it all up, and then it was immediately the whole ship was on fire. I had understood that the ship was getting ready to leave the next day for San Francisco. So we had full ammunition, full fuel and everything else. So when she blew up, the fuel was all over the water and everything else was all afire. So we had no way to get down. We were up about 80 feet in the air. The oil burning down below. The only way to get off was we noticed a fellow on the vessel, which is tied alongside as a repair ship, and he got a line and threw over to us, and 6 of us scooted across that line, hand over hand, just as fast as we could get. And then they immediately took us over to the hospital ship, which was about 1,000 yards from us. And they paramedics, or not paramedics, but the corpsmen and whatnot, people there, they met us, and first thing they did was start cutting what you had left, clothes. Another gal was Marquez with the X. We had to get morphine. And that was the last I remember for 2 days. That morphine I was out.
Well, let me ask you this. You're wearing a Purple Heart, but yours is a little different. Yours has a Silver Admiral star on it. That's not something we see very often, and I have a feeling there's a story behind that. How did you get the Admiral star on your Purple Heart?
Well, this past summer. We were in Pearl Harbor doing a documentary, and several of the high commanders, admirals, everybody wanted to get together and meet us while we was there. And the Purple Heart was given to me originally by an admiral. I think Admiral Pons was the commanding officer of the Pearl Harbor Pacific Fleet, and had a session with him, talked for quite a while. He's a great guy, and when we got through talking, he had called his orderly over and whispered something to him, went to his quarters. He came back out and he had taken one of his stars off his collar and put on me. So we just decided that's going to be part of that Purple Heart.
It's that is one of those ultimate tributes of respect, and we thank you so much for sharing your stories with us and coming on campus and sharing your stories with people who were obviously not alive at the time, but keeping the history alive.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming in.
Well, I thank you for having me.
That's our show. To keep up with the latest news and watch the segments from this and other editions of AZ Illustrated, go to our website, azpm.org. I'm Jill Jordan Spitz. Thanks for watching.